Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and today I'm going to be bringing you my Diablo 4 review. I'm currently sitting somewhere north of 70 hours of gameplay, and I finished the main campaign yesterday. All of that is available to you in the form of live stream VODs here on the channel. Just check out the Diablo 4 Let's Play playlist if that is something that you're interested in seeing. Maybe want to watch my reaction to some of the main story beats or any of that stuff, because in this video I'm not going to be showcasing any of the story of the game. The gameplay is just me going through random dungeons, stuff like that, so if you're concerned about spoilers, you don't have to worry too much about it. Since I finished the main campaign, I've progressed my character over to World Tier 3, and now I'm leveling my character in World Tier 3 in preparation to eventually progress it to World Tier 4 and see what challenges await me there. Suffice to say, I'm nowhere close to being done with the game, which I guess for some people was going to be something predictable, but for me was actually somewhat surprising, because you see, after all of my experiences with Diablo over the years, I had an incredibly negative bias coming into this one. You might be wondering why. Well, let me tell you guys just a very quick summary of the way in which I experienced Diablo. The very first Diablo was my first ARPG that I've ever played, which it wasn't the game that completely hooked me, but it was something that I greatly enjoyed. On the other hand, Diablo 2 became my favorite game of all time up until I got to play Dark Souls. So if you've been with the channel for a while, you'll be like, oh damn, that was a hell of a long time. Because I kept coming back to Diablo 2. It was just a fantastic experience. And then, you know, along came Diablo 3, which was an absolute disappointment on release. This is due to the fact that, quite simply, in Diablo 3, there wasn't any loot drops, because Blizzard wanted players to go ahead and go and play with the auction houses that they had. The gold auction house, the real money auction house. Most of my time was spent grinding gold so that I could then go into the gold auction house to buy gear, because gear just quite simply didn't drop organically. You needed to have like a Chinese gold farming bot playing the game 24/7 in order to then put that loot into the auction house so that we could go and get it. So I never even finished Nightmare mode in Diablo 3 because I got completely burned out of the game before, you know, I even got there. Now, eventually with the release of Reaper of Souls, I was like, oh, this is actually good. Loot 2.0, I liked it. A lot more loot drops. Stuff was way better. I understand that not everybody has that opinion, but that's just the way that I felt about it. And then eventually Blizzard went ahead and they decided to have that famous 2018 BlizzCon, where they finished up the opening sequence of the BlizzCon show with the announcement of Diablo Immortal. Woo-hoo-hoo. And let me tell you something, Diablo Immortal is an absolute piece of dog shit. And I know that a lot of people would say like, oh, it's actually not that bad if you're not concerned about the monetization. And all I can say about that is that you people have, the people who said that, you have absolutely no taste. I'm very sorry, because even if you were to take away the monetization of Diablo Immortal, you'd still end up with a pretty piss poor of a video game. That is just a straight up fact, and this is by someone that actually played the game all the way, despite the fact I hated every goddamn second of it. It was a terrible video game then, it's probably a terrible video game now, but I'm never going to play that piece of trash again. So, as you can imagine, all of those conflicting feelings about Diablo came into play when I started playing Diablo 4. As a matter of fact, when they released the first couple of betas, I was like, okay, this is going to be the confirmation that I need to know that I'm not interested in this video game at all, so I jumped into the beta. Surprise, surprise. Blizzard had actually made something pretty friggin' good, in my personal opinion. Now, one of the things that I think that I can usually tell is, after I spent a couple of hours in the video game, I can usually tell whether or not I feel that the development team that is involved in the making of said game has any passion behind it. Because, you know, you go through so many soulless games that whenever you see a game that you can kind of feel like, oh, the animations on this and the detail on this and the way that this thing works and the moment-to-moment gameplay, and, you know, the voice acting, all of these little things just kind of come into a certain spot in your brain, and you're like, I can tell. I can tell that the people that were working on this game, the people that were developing this game, they're actually in the trenches doing the proper development work. These are people that are very passionate about this. And I could tell this ever since I played the beta. And now that I've actually played the final game, I can definitely assure you that the team of developers that worked on this game, these were incredibly passionate people, and very specifically, these people were extremely passionate about the Diablo IP. Now, I'm not going to get into story specifics because I don't want to get into spoilers and stuff like that. I will tell you my thoughts on the story and all of that a little bit further in the video. But like, this whole package of Diablo 4 is like a love letter to fans of Diablo. At least that is my interpretation of it. I greatly enjoyed my time with the game so far. I've had an absolute blast. That's not to say the game is perfect, and there are a couple of things that I want to bring up that I consider to be very negative when it comes to Diablo 4. But overall, I would be lying if I was to say that my experience was not extremely positive and extremely enjoyable throughout. And like I said, I'm still playing. There's going to be more, and there's going to be more to discuss about it as well. So, I want to start things off by talking about some of the negative aspects of Diablo 4. It's just going to be that type of video. We're going to start off with the negatives so that then I can tell you everything else about the game. So the very first thing, the PlayStation 5 launch. I don't know if you guys were here during the stream. I held like a launch type event where we went through the lore videos of Diablo and all of that stuff, and it was a fantastic time right up until the point where it was time to actually play the game. Because unfortunately, the PlayStation servers exploded. And I've heard from people say, oh, this was exclusively a Sony problem. I don't think things are that simple because Blizzard is apparently still investigating that problem. So it should have been solved by now, especially considering that for most other games, PlayStation Network appears to be functioning just fine. So in my opinion, it's not as simple as, oh, it's clearly a PlayStation thing and blah, 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 blah. I think there's a little bit more to it than that. I mean, obviously it is about the platform and whatnot, but I think the blame is not solely on PlayStation is the part that I'm getting at. But either way, I don't care about that. I'm just saying there were some serious issues at the launch of that, and some of us couldn't play for 2 hours, but I already made a whole video talking about that. I'm not going to get into any more detail. At this point, it appears to be solved. I can tell you ever since I solved the issue on my end, I've never had any massive queues. I've never had like excessive disconnects. I've never had like too many problems. The game might have crashed on me a little bit more than usual on launch day. So on the 6th of June, the game felt like it was crashing a little bit more than what I would have expected. But other than that, you know, things have been pretty much silky smooth. Now, another criticism that I have of Diablo 4 is the business model. I've talked about this at length, but just for people that are not aware of it, I strongly dislike business models where companies monetize early access to the game. I don't think that is a good thing for the industry. I think that is a terrible thing for the industry. There are way too many bad implications to that practice. And the weird thing is, most of people don't really seem to care. But I'm still going to call it out because I really don't like it. So the whole thing about $20 gives you 4 days of early access, especially when those 4 days are a weekend, I thought that was pretty friggin' disgusting. It's a pretty terrible business practice, and I would not recommend anybody, engage with that stuff. I did it because I'm a content creator, and timing is something that is pretty much key to being able to produce content on YouTube, so it is what it is. On top of that, you have an extremely expensive base price. It is $70 in the US. It is 80 euros if you want to buy it in a console in Portugal, which is extremely expensive. Then on top of that, you have some really expensive cosmetics in the microtransaction store as well. But the fact of the matter is, up until this point, everything that I've seen in there is a cosmetic. And I'm gonna be real, the way that I just deal with that is like, I just don't buy them. It would be so easy for people to just not buy those cosmetics, but people can't help themselves, so people are going to do what people are going to do. And to be honest, I'm too tired of fighting that fight. So if people want to tell me, oh, Rurikhan, are the cosmetics fair? Are they unfair? Do you think the price is fair? It's like, I think the price is trash because this is a $70 game. This is not a free-to-play game that you downloaded. This is a $70 experience. And in my case, it was 100 euros. And I didn't even buy the Ultimate Edition. It was 100 euros for the Digital Deluxe in consoles in Portugal. Yes, indeed. So it's extremely expensive just for the base experience of the game. So don't try to sell me on any cosmetics because I'm quite simply not going to buy them. Like, you already got my money. That's all you're getting out of it. And then on top of it, you also have a season pass. So you have monetizing early access. You have a really expensive game, you have expensive microtransactions, and then you add a season pass on top of it. Like, I think this is not a good business practice at all. I think this is a terrible business practice when it comes to consumers and stuff like that. I think that you could have like a hybrid, like say for instance, if you were to launch the game at something like $40 and then you'd sell the season pass and a couple of cosmetics, that I feel like would be much more acceptable. But at the price range that you're launching it and monetizing early access, yeah, I'm going to have to call that out, and I think that that is a terrible practice. Now, another thing that I need to point out, because apparently this was not obvious for everyone, because, you know, not everybody's following the news cycle quite as closely, but a lot of people are not aware of this because I've been seeing it in the comments. This game is an always online game. So you need a constant internet connection in order to play it. If your internet goes down, you cannot play Diablo 4. That is just the way that they designed it. Doesn't matter if you're playing on console, PC, whatever, it's always online. Now, there are some benefits to that as well, which is the fact that the game has crossplay across all platforms. So you can play PlayStation, Xbox, PC, and you can play with all of your friends from all of these other platforms, which is a bit of a plus that comes from the fact that the game is always online. So, you know, there's definitely a downside there, but there's also the upside of having crossplay and being able to play with all of your friends. Now, I also have a couple of complaints when it comes to the UI. I'm not going to go into too specifics with that because I could spend like a whole hour here nitpicking certain things. But I do feel like the UI could be a little bit improved on quite a few things, like better sorting functionality for like your stash and stuff like that. And even better indication of the things that you have selected when you are upgrading materials, because I've actually upgraded the, not materials, but when you're upgrading gear, I've actually upgraded the wrong piece of gear plenty of times. And I know that some people are going to say, oh, that seems like a console problem, because yes, playing with a controller is, you know, when it comes to the UI of a Diablo game, is actually a little bit more challenging than that. But apart from that, these are like my big complaints when it comes to Diablo 4. Because after you get through those, my experience with the game was silky smooth, and I've been enjoying the ever-living crap out of it. I've pretty much been playing the game non-stop. When I stop the stream, I go home and I start playing like the side quests and stuff like that. So it's been an absolute blast to play. One of the things that I would like to bring up for starters is visuals, because visuals, you know, a lot of people just care about graphics. I think that graphically the game looks really good. Again, the footage that you are watching is from PlayStation 5. And there's one thing that I gotta give them credit for, because this is one of the things that really annoys me in a lot of modern video games. And that is whenever it comes to the console version, you're like, oh, you want the performance version or do you want the quality version? And usually what happens when you have to make that choice is you end up with a quality version that runs like complete ass, and then you end up with a performance version that runs a little bit better than the quality version that, you know, that runs like ass, but it doesn't look very good. And what Blizzard did when it comes to that is just like, no, there's no performance mode, there's no quality mode. There's the 60 FPS mode, and that's what you get. And I was like, thank you. Friggin' I know that this is such a basic thing, but it triggers me so much that because the thing that people don't understand is that when you're forced to optimize for quality and then optimize for performance, that is development time that you are taking away from developing the game and from doing things that are important in order to optimize for these two different targets. When you have one target of optimization, you're like, no, this is the mode where it has to play. Make it as shiny and as pretty as it can possibly be and make it run at 60 FPS. And that's that. And thank you. Friggin' thank you. Although they still end up doing the cutscenes at 30 FPS, which is another pet peeve of mine that I complain about all the time. But overall, I thought the visuals are great. I thought the cutscenes were outstanding in my opinion. The animations are looking really good. I have no complaints whatsoever from a visual perspective when it comes to this game. And as a matter of fact, like I said, I'm pretty happy with the fact that they chose not to go for like, oh, let's go do it the 8K route at 30 FPS. Like, no, here's the mode. It's 60 FPS. This is the mode that you play in. This is not a PC. If you want to, you know, fiddle around with a zillion different configurations, go to the PC and do that there. Thank you. Friggin' thank you. Please normalize this for every video game. Just give us 60 FPS and optimize it for that. And that's that. But, you know, it is what it is. Now, when it comes to sound, in my opinion, the sound of this game is excellent. Like, you have really good, crunchy, meaty sounds. You can hear some of them in the gameplay footage that you are watching. I think the sound is really, really good. I think the voice acting is friggin' excellent. I think the cutscenes, in terms of, like, when you see the actors speaking in the cutscenes, I think it sounds really good. And here's another interesting thing. I think the soundtrack of this game is absolutely phenomenal. But I also think that a lot of people are probably not going to listen to it all that much because these sound effects completely overpower the soundtrack in most situations. And once I realized this, because I realized that I was trying to hear the music because I was like, oh, this music is actually really cool. And I couldn't hear it because the sound of the game is too loud. So I manually went in and I mixed the audio a little bit. And I kind of feel like they could have done a better mixing of audio. And I would actually recommend people to go ahead and manually into the sound settings and manually mix the audio, because I can tell you right now, if you're not bringing that soundtrack to the forefront, you are missing out on so much because the soundtrack is so friggin' great. Like, it really is. And you can hear it on my streams, like after the second or third stream, you can actually hear it because I spent some time doing the mixing properly. I was blown away. I think it's fantastic. I think that the team did a fantastic job with all of that. So visually, really, really good. Can't recommend it enough. Sound, really, really good. Can't recommend it enough. And then we have something that surprised me, which was the story. The story of this game is actually really good. And here's another important thing. For those of you that like, oh, but I never played Diablo 2, I never played Diablo 3, I don't know what the hell is going on, and now this is Diablo 4, do I need to play the other games? No, you don't have to play the other games. What I would recommend is go to Blizzard's official Diablo channel, and they have 4 lore videos there, okay? And you watch those 4 lore videos, and you're all caught up. Now, it doesn't have all of the little nuances and details of everything that happens in previous Diablos, but it has everything that you need to know about the story of Diablo, from the creation of the world to the eternal conflict to everything. All of that is there. And I would heavily recommend, like, if you're a newcomer to Diablo 4, check out those videos before you actually play the game, because they tell you a lot of story, and it was actually cool. As a matter of fact, I might put that portion of my live stream available here on the channel, because, you know, my reactions to these videos and stuff, because I also bring up, like, old cinematics of Diablo whenever certain things happen, and, you know, it's just like a cool trip down memory lane, so I'd definitely recommend that. But then when it comes to telling the actual story of Diablo 4, personally, I greatly enjoyed it. I think they did a fantastic job, and particularly near the end, there were some interactions with some... This doesn't mean that at the start the story wasn't good. The story was good throughout. But especially at the end, there were some character interactions that I was like, wow, that is really well done. Like, they've did a really cool job here. And here's another interesting point. You know, usually in games like this, you'll probably, like, discount the value of side quests and stuff like that. And here's the thing. If you're someone who's focused on progressing an ARPG, then the story doesn't really matter for you to begin with. You're probably like, oh, I don't care. I just want to get to level 100 as fast as I possibly can, min-max my character to the nth degree, and boom, 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 go, go, go. Like, if you're that type of person, sure thing. Go have your fun. It's whatever. I'm sure you'll enjoy it, because we'll talk about gameplay soon. But, like, for those of you that actually care about the story of the game is good, but the quality of some of the side quests was also very surprising. Like, there are some really good side quests in this game. Now, that's not to say that every side quest is outstanding. You have your standard fetch quest, where it's like, oh, go over here, kill 10 things, bring me 10 things back. But a lot of the side quests are a lot more involved. Like, there's this quest in Skosglen where it starts with you trying to find, like, something super basic. Like, oh, find me, where is the sign to my tavern, right? And then you find the sign of the tavern, which was taken by someone, and then you get to know the story of this person, why this person took the sign of the tavern, and the tragedy that befell them. And then this all kind of culminates several quests later with you going up against, like, this old organization that came back, and it's all interconnected in a way that I was like, wow, this is a side quest. The quality of this side quest is actually really good. Now, at the end of the day, all of this is linear. There's no, like, choices that you are making with your character and whatnot. But there's also a lot of flavored dialogue throughout the story of the game, which was very surprising as well. Like, some really good flavored dialogue. So every now and then, you might want to check in with some of the NPCs, what they're saying, and whatnot, and instead of just following the critical path to go through the story, actually see the NPCs' opinions about the events that are taking place and to give you a little bit more background into things. I was very, very surprised. Now, there is an important detail that I feel the need to mention when it comes to the story, and that is that according to what I've heard recently, Diablo 4 was designed as a trilogy. I mean, they haven't said it was designed as a trilogy, but like they said, they already have 2 expansions that they're currently working on. And considering the way in which the story ends, that leads me to believe that they probably have the whole story set up as a trilogy. And that is why, you know, they already have 2 other sequels, because the story doesn't really end. You can definitely feel that there's like an ending of a chapter, but the ending of the book is still far away. So that the story is, in my eyes, developed as a trilogy. Like I said, you will get to close the chapter, you will get some sense of finality with the story that you are experiencing, but it's very obvious that things aren't over. There's plenty more to come along, which to me, in a way, it was at least a little more respectful than the way in which they ended the story of 3, in which it's like, oh, there's going to be more to this story, but we're just going to pretend that nothing happened, right? Because like anybody who knew the story of Diablo 2 and then you see the way in which Diablo 3 ends and you're like, wait, what? How can you got to tell me more. And at least this time they took the time to tell you that additional thing. And it's like, okay, listen, here's what's going to happen now. And here's the way that things are going to go. So all of that is cool. In terms of feel, one of the biggest things that I have to say about this is that I felt that they've completely nailed the vibe of Sanctuary. Now, I've played several ARPGs over the years. You know, I played a little bit of Path of Exile here and there. I've played Grim Dawn. I've played Torchlight. I've played all of these ARPGs, and for some reason, they usually don't click with me for very long. There's just something about the world of Diablo that really clicks with me, which is why this series is so important to me, and, you know, why I was already expecting, I'm going to be disappointed again. Here we go again, right? But with this game, the whole theme of the eternal conflict, angels, demons, and the peoples of Sanctuary, I feel like it's never been quite as well captured as it was in this game. Like, I'm actually impressed. And like I said, if you do some of these side quests, you get to know more about the struggles that the peoples of Sanctuary face. And that was super impressive. They definitely nailed it down. Now, in terms of gameplay, like I said, I'm completely hooked. I've only played Necromancer so far, but just like the gameplay loop of running around, doing dungeons, killing things, doing side quests, and all of the activities that they have available for you to do as you play through the game, those have been very satisfying to engage in, just have a blast. Some of the things that I thought were actually going to bother me a lot, like the fact that when you get an aspect from a legendary, then you have to find the legendary again, because you can only do that thing once, as opposed to getting the aspects from dungeons. You know, some more nitty-gritty things about the min-maxing of your character. It actually hasn't bothered me as much as I expected. Another thing that I expected was going to bother me a lot was respec costs. It also hasn't bothered me so far. I'm currently I thought I was 54, but in the video I'm 55. So I'm currently level 55, and basically I've respec'd every single time I felt like it. Now, I didn't do a full respec. I'll respec like key skills. So for instance, I want to swap to this core skill from that core skill, so I'll just instantly swap them and no problem. And yeah, you spend some gold, but gold is not as hard to come by as I initially thought. Because, like, you'll do a run, you'll fill up your inventory, you'll go to town, sell everything that you don't need, and that'll be like from 200 to 300,000 gold, which that is more than enough for you to... As a matter of fact, at this level, that alone would allow me to respec the whole tree twice. So, you know, up until this point, I still haven't run into problems about respecking, which is something that I've complained about when I noticed like the heavy cost that we had for respecking. So, you know, all of that hasn't really been a problem. Fiddling around with the build, fiddling around with the Paragon boards. Paragon boards actually is something that initially I thought, you're going to have to really go ahead and get like a Giga Chad Brain build and follow that up to a T. And I think that's actually one of the strengths of Diablo 4, is that I don't think you need to follow a build to a T to be successful. Like, for instance, to give you an idea, I'm playing Minion Necromancer. If you go and you ask a majority, at least from the vibe that I get from a lot of the really hardcore players, the players that know way more about Diablo from a mechanical standpoint than I do, if you were to ask them, they'll tell you like, oh, minion builds are trash. You shouldn't play Minion Necromancer, and they're probably all playing something else. I think that Shadow Necro is supposed to be really good or something like that. But I decided, no, I'm going to play Minion Necro, and if it goes wrong, it goes wrong, and it's whatever. And then at that point, I'll respec. I've been playing Minion Necro since the beginning. And, you know, there were a couple of stages there where I felt a little bit underpowered and felt the need to adjust my build. But this is World Tier 3 at level 55, and this is how fast I'm tearing down monsters. Now, this is not a nightmare dungeon. I haven't done some of the more challenging things, maybe. But you guys let me know. Does this seem like good kill times? Does this look like I'm doing good? Because it feels pretty good at how fast I'm killing stuff. Like, it feels pretty reasonable. Every now and then, my minions do get killed, and that does become a problem. But overall, I feel like we are coasting. I feel like we're shredding. Look at how fast we just destroyed this big pile of mobs that was over here. You know, I'm very curious to take this build further and further and see how well it performs on higher levels. But up until this point, like, it's been doing fine. And I didn't look up any builds online. Hell, I didn't even plan the build. I just started playing the game and went like, this looks good, that looks good, this looks good. So, in a way, I would almost recommend people like, don't follow a build on your first character. Why are you robbing yourself of the possibility of experimenting with skills in order to play some super sweaty build that you might end up not even liking? Like, experiment. Play with it. Check it out. See what you can make happen. I've been surprised because, again, I expected this build to be trash by this point in the game, and it's still holding. And I'm currently leveling up a Paragon board that's going to make this build even more powerful. And I've found even more legendaries that support the build's playstyle even more. And I keep finding new things to add on to it, and it just seems to be working fine. I'm curious if that's been the experience with other people with builds that maybe are a little bit less conventional. Let me know in the comment section below, but this has been fantastic for me when it comes to that. So in terms of gameplay, super solid. I have a couple of struggles. I have one criticism, very specific to Necromancer, and that is that sometimes you have these static things that you have to destroy, like say maybe some type of a barrier, like a wall or something shows up in the screen, and my minions won't attack it. They'll just sit there like, that thing's not attacking us. We don't. This wall is nice. This is a nice wall. Why are you attacking this wall, Mr. Necromancer? What has this wall ever done to you? And I'm like, well, it's in the way. And they just sit there and do nothing. So Blizzard might have to adapt a couple of things here and there, but most of the time they behave like what you would expect. And you know, there are challenges like this situation here where this dude has a bubble shield and they have to move a little bit to get the minions to engage. There's some quality of life that can definitely be added from minion builds, but you know, I'm just thinking about stuff in terms of minion builds, but there's also quality of life in terms of sorting through your items like I talked earlier and all of that jazz. I think that people shouldn't rush to min-max this unless you're a competitive player. Obviously, there are players who are doing it for the ladders and for getting into the whole Statue of Lilith thing and all of that. But I feel like your average, everyday player, I feel like people almost sometimes forget to actually enjoy video games. Like, just play the game. Just play the game. Do whatever skills you feel like doing. Don't stress out about following a specific build with your Paragon boards and all this stuff. Because at the end of the day, when the next season rolls around, you're going to be making a new character anyway. And at that point, you can go ahead and, you know, you can at least have your first playthrough where you just play normally. And then during the seasons, go wild. Do whatever the hell you want. Follow builds. And at the end of the day, look, play the game however it's fun for you. This is just like something that I thought about while I was doing this. Now, I do have another complaint. This is kind of like, this is a little bit of a weird one, and this is very specific. So once you finish the game, your main objective is going to be to gather renown. Now, grinding renown doesn't bother me because there's a whole lot of different ways of doing it. Exploring the map grants you renown. Capturing strongholds grants you renown. Doing dungeons, which I like, grants you renown. Doing pretty much any activity out in the open world is going to give you renown. Right? So renown grinding is not something that bothers me. I'm not rushing through it. I'm just going ahead and doing events whenever I feel like doing them, and that's been working. But one thing that I don't like is the altars of Lilith. I think altars of Lilith are meaningless busy work that has no business being in the game. Like, seriously. So for those of you who don't know, altars of Lilith are these altars that you'll find as you are playing through the game, if you are paying attention. Let me tell you right now, unless you have the eyes of an eagle, you are going to miss 90% of these Lilith shrines. And, you know, that basically means that eventually you have to go back and you have to pick them up. And you do have to pick them up because it is a significant power gain that you will be able to get from doing these shrines. Because every time that you complete one of these shrines, you're going to get like +2 to a certain stat. I think you even get Paragon points. You get all of these things that basically contribute a significant amount of power to your character. So these are not things that you can just skip. You have to do them. And it's just boring because there's no real meaningful engagement with these things. It's just, oh, find thing, click on thing, find thing, click on thing, find thing. And, you know, obviously I went online. I was like, okay, give me a map of them. And even with the map, I would go to the location where the shrine is supposed to be, and sometimes I'll miss it because they hide it in, like, you know, in the middle of foliage in the map or something like that. And only at certain angles you'll be able to see them. And I'm just like, for all of the other things that I'm doing that are extremely fun, this just feels like something that is not fun, and I don't understand the design purpose of this. Now, supposedly, you only have to do them once in softcore. I don't know how it works when it comes to hardcore. For those of you who don't know, hardcore mode is a mode where once your character dies, it's gone forever. So it's, as the name implies, it's hardcore. It requires you to pay a lot more attention to make sure that you don't die. But ultimately, again, the Altars of Lilith thing, I just think that there could have been a better way of doing them. Like, maybe they could give you cosmetic rewards or something like that for hunting those down, because it is basically busy work. And if they were to just give you cosmetic rewards instead of power, you can be damn sure I wouldn't be doing them at all, because it's way too boring. But anyways, you know, those are my complaints. Those are my thoughts. Some people are going to ask me, Rurikhan, is Diablo 4 worth it? This is a question that I've been getting a lot in my live stream. And I still struggle with that question, because at the end of the day, I do not like the business model of Diablo 4, because I think the game is overly monetized, and I've made that perfectly clear. But at the same time, the game is also extremely good. There's a lot of quality in this game. There is a good story. There's a lot of really good gameplay. There's crossplay. There's a lot of quality of life stuff. There's some real, genuine fun to get out of it. So if you can afford it, and, you know, comfortably, and you want to go ahead and jump in, I think it's worth it. If it looks like you like the gameplay that you're seeing on screen, I think the game is worth it. And let me tell you, it takes a lot for me to say that about a Blizzard game. But I also think that the game would have been a much easier recommendation at a different price point, without all these bullshit microtransactions. So my recommendation would be, do not engage in the microtransactions. But people are going to do what people are going to do, and you do you. But at the very least, it's nice to see Blizzard come out with a good game, which, let's also face it, the last World of Warcraft expansion was also pretty good in my opinion. The Dragonflight expansion. So, yeah, you know, it's also important. It's important to criticize Blizzard when they fuck up. But I think it's also important to say the things that they do right, because at the end of the day, if you are criticizing, I would hope that that is because you would like them to do better, because that's the reason why I do it. I give them a lot of crap. I criticize every single time that I think they do something wrong, and the reason I do that is because I want to see them do better, because I am very passionate about a lot of IP that exists under Blizzard, and I will continue to be very critical of the things that they do and the poor business practices that they do. But in order to strike a balance with that, I am also required to be honest and truthful when they release something that I think is a good game. And Diablo 4, in my opinion, is a fantastic experience. It's just a shame that it has all these monetization things attached to it, because very much unlike Diablo Immortal, which is a piece of shit with or without microtransactions, Diablo 4 is actually a really good game. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know what you guys thought about it in the comment section down below. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe, subscribe, bell notification icon, like, buttons, all the YouTube things. Peace out.